check out our streaming schedule for this week. We've got tons of content in terms of the NFL and college football, as we're going live just about every single day this week. So make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single moment where we go live. And now, on with our feature presentation. When you talk about some of the most electric return men and the fastest men in the history of the National Football League, this man right here is one of the first names that comes to mind if you watched football in the 1980s. This man right here is Gerald McNeil, otherwise known as the Ice Cube, and he is best known for being super light and super quick. If he got in the open field, watch out, because the man was absolutely electric in terms of his speed. During the 1986 season, McNeil had not just a punt return touchdown, but he had a kickoff return touchdown to go alongside that. Not only did he lead the NFL in return touchdowns during the 1986 season, but his impact on special teams was a big reason why the Browns were able to make it to the AFC Championship for the first time in franchise history, and make it to the stage before the Super Bowl for the first time since 1969, before the merger happened. You can learn more about that 1986 season for the Browns by clicking the card in the upper right corner. And in 1987, during the abbreviated strike-shortened season where the Browns once again made it to the AFC Championship, McNeil was once again really good, finishing inside the top 5 of the NFL in punt return yards and making it to the first and the only Pro Bowl of his career. This man right here was an absolutely electric player and lives on in NFL history to this very day. And if you want to learn more about forgotten players that earn their name throughout NFL history, then this is the place for you, because we talk about all things NFL history all the time with a new video every single day and a new live stream every single day. So if you like that sort of stuff, then be sure to hit that like button down below, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel. Thanks in advance for your support as we try and hit 70,000 subscribers. When all was said and done, McNeil had 2 return touchdowns in his career, which seems like not a lot considering how explosive he was, and how it felt as though every time the ball was in his hands, he could make magic happen. However, he could have had a third. He absolutely could have had a third. And while McNeil never had a game in his career with multiple touchdowns, he also absolutely could have had one. Because during Week 2 of the 1987 NFL season, when his Cleveland Browns played the Pittsburgh Steelers, this man right here, the Ice Cube himself, Gerald McNeil, was so close to taking one to the house. And the reason why he couldn't do it? Pink Floyd. Seriously. Because in 1987, the Cleveland Browns had a rivalry with one of the biggest bands in the world, none other than Pink Floyd themselves. And nearly 4 decades later, we're going to break that down, especially in the wake of the Browns playing the Steelers tonight on Thursday Night Football, if you're watching as of this video getting released. We don't need no education, but we do need a video about one of the weirdest stories in the history of this rivalry. Because this is the story behind the drama between the Cleveland Browns, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and amazingly enough, Pink Floyd. Before I talk about the actual incident in question, we need some context to understand the importance of this game, as well as how the game itself was going. It's September 20th, 1987. It's Week 2 of the NFL season, and we've got a big AFC Central rivalry game on our hands over at Cleveland Municipal Stadium between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns. For the main team in our story, the Browns, to say that this was a big game would be putting it lightly, especially after they lost in Week 1 on the road to the New Orleans Saints by a final score of 28-21. No one knew what the future of the NFL held after this week, as it was all but a given that the players were going to go on strike, and replacement players were going to come in for who knows how long. So not that you could ever afford to drop to 0-2, especially seeing as of the 15 teams to start 0-2 over the previous 2 seasons in 1985 and 1986, not a single one of them ended up making it to the playoffs. But if there was ever a season where you could not afford to go 0-2, this was the year. You needed to win this game, not just because it was a huge rivalry game, and not just because a loss would put you 2 back in the division lead already, but because no one knew how long this season was going to be, or what players would even be on the team the next time a game was played. And so far, things are all right for the Browns to start off. They're leading at 3-0 after a 29-yard field goal. And immediately after the field goal, The defense gets a huge stop when on third down, just as the Steelers were driving and looked like they had some momentum on their side. Al Baker comes in and destroys Mark Malone for a huge loss, backing the Steelers up into their own territory and forcing 4th and a mile. Al Baker was an incredible player and absolutely has a case for the Hall of Fame, considering the fact that he had 131 unofficial sacks and finished with 23 sacks as a rookie during the 1978 season with the Detroit Lions, which remains the unofficial record for most sacks in a season to this day. And this was another one of his incredible plays, as even at the age of 31, he was showing no signs of slowing down. I should note that Cleveland's defense played lights out on this day, which we'll get to in a little bit, and this was one of their many, and I truly mean it, many highlights. Now it's 4th down, and the Steelers are forced to punt. McNeil has a nice return to the 20-yard line. However, in something that you don't see every day, the Steelers are called for offside. Yes, the punting team is called for offside, as the referee rules that number 20, undrafted rookie Dwight Stone, lined up beyond the line of scrimmage. Stone would play 14 years in the NFL and would contribute quite a bit, but this was definitely a rookie growing pain moment for him. And Browns head coach Marty Schottenheimer figures that it's a good idea to have the Steelers re-kick the ball. Make all the fat guys and big men run down the field again, especially when you got the speed of Gerald McNeil working in your favor. No, the 20-yard line isn't a horrible spot to be at, all things considered, but we feel as though we can be in a better spot. And with that, the Steelers re-kick the ball. But before I show the re-kick, we need to address the elephant in the room, or the 800-pound gorilla in the room, depending on the comparison you want to use. And that is that the field looks like complete and utter crap. In fact, I've taken craps that look nicer than the crap that the Steelers and Browns were playing on during this game. Usually, there's a pretty good weather-related reason as to why the field looks terrible. I've done plenty of videos on games in the past where it was raining cats and dogs, which makes poor playing conditions understandable. We saw this in 1982, when the Green Bay Packers took on the Buffalo Bills over at Milwaukee County Stadium, in a game that you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. We saw this in 2007, when the Pittsburgh Steelers played the Miami Dolphins in that infamous 3-0 game on Monday Night Football over at Heinz Field, where punts literally landed in the ground without taking a bounce. You can learn more about that by clicking the card in the upper right corner. And heck, this wasn't even the only time that we had a field-related controversy during Week 2 of the 1987 NFL season. Seriously, if I had a nickel for every single time during Week 2 of the 1987 NFL season that there was a controversy regarding the condition of the field, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice, as we saw this in the tie game between the Denver Broncos and the Green Bay Packers over at Milwaukee County Stadium, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. But with most of these incidents, the weather was the great equalizer and played a huge factor. Here, I mean, you can see throughout all these clips that it's perfectly sunny. There was some rain that took place over the course of the week, but it was nothing outrageous or out of the ordinary. Yes, the Browns share their stadium with the Cleveland Indians in Major League Baseball, but just about every NFL team back then in the days of multi-purpose stadiums was sharing a stadium with their MLB counterpart. So that doesn't necessarily explain anything. And it's undeniable that the field looked awful and played awful. Said Steelers offensive lineman Tunch Ilkin, "It was so bad for both teams. It's not like we were playing in muck and they were playing on a rug." So why does the field look like complete and utter crap? Well, you can blame Pink Floyd for that. Seriously, Pink Floyd. Because for some inexplicable reason, Cleveland Municipal Stadium thought that it was a good idea, in the middle of football season and right before the Browns were set to play at home, to host not just one Pink Floyd concert, but 2 Pink Floyd concerts, hosting the iconic band on Wednesday, September 16th and Thursday, September 17th. This was a monumental tour, seeing as it was their reunion tour, known as a Momentary Lapse of Reason tour. And the Cleveland shows were the first shows on the tour to take place in the United States. To be fair to the people that operated the stadium, the show was a huge financial success and a huge critical success, as both nights sold out. But thinking logically about this, What happens when you have a rock concert, scratch that, two rock concerts take place on a football field, and you're not really able to cover up the football field? Well, the field gets destroyed. Completely and utterly destroyed. There's a reason that very few NFL stadiums were dumb enough to do something like this. Tampa Stadium hosted the reunion tour on October 30th, 1987. The Buccaneers didn't have a home game for the whole month after that, not playing until November 22nd. The Pontiac Silverdome hosted the reunion tour on November 10th. The Lions didn't have a home game until Thanksgiving, when on November 26th, they took on the Kansas City Chiefs. That game was a battle between a 2-8 Lions team and a 1-9 Chiefs team. So if you're wondering if it can get worse than the Giants-Cowboys travesty we're out to experience next week, the answer is yes. Yes, it can. The Hoosier Dome hosted the reunion tour on November 12, 1987. The Colts didn't have a home game after that until November 29th, 2.5 weeks afterwards. You get the idea. Everyone except for Cleveland seemed to grasp the concept and the idea that hosting a rock concert on a football field, especially an outdoor football field where the elements could come into play, is a really bad idea if there's no grace period in between. And it was not good for Cleveland, to say the least. Said David Fry, the director of field maintenance, "We couldn't cover the field for part of the time because there were 20,000 chairs out there. No one, and I truly mean it, no one had fun playing on that field." Said Steelers head coach Chuck Noll, who you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. "It's terrible. It looks like a pigsty." Steelers defensive line coach Joe Green said on the field conditions, "Everybody has good reason not to get knocked down. It smells like cow manure." Steelers kicker Gary Anderson, as in one of the best kickers in NFL history, hated playing on this field, which tells you everything that you need to know, because he played on a crap ton of fields over his long and illustrious NFL career. As he said on the field, you had to worry about kicking with the field that slippery. The footing was terrible. And the field was so bad that it was a huge talking point throughout the broadcast from the announcing team on NBC of Marv Albert and Joe Namath. Take a listen.
The condition of the field is questionable. It could get even worse. Today could well be an adventure, Joe, because of the field conditions. Very sloppy out there. In fact, we saw during the course of the pregame warm-ups, Browns kicker Jeff Jager took a spill. Now, the Cleveland Stadium ground crew out to patch up the field. You will see this throughout the day. We mentioned the sloppy playing conditions. It did rain during the week, and there was a Pink Floyd concert on Wednesday and Thursday nights. I know Joe got into town early for that one. Caught them both. Unbelievable. Maybe a new device that is called the Sopper, named after Eugene Sopper. I'm told because of the poor field conditions here in Cleveland. This is an apparatus that is the natural surface version of the Zamboni, a giant sponge.
The grounds crew tried their absolute best to make this work. During every single timeout, the grounds crew was out there working their butts off to replace divots and to work on the field as best they could. But you can only put so much lipstick on a pig before coming to the realization that, at the end of the day, it's a pig. And the grounds crew could only do so much and could only limit the awfulness of the field to a certain degree. Which takes us back to the punt in question. Here's a chance for Gerald McNeil to get a second chance to return this one, with Pittsburgh Special Teams Unit guest. The advantage is 100% going to McNeil here. If he gets a seal here and a seal there, he's gone. As for what happens next...
Again, this time from his 22. Again, the snap off the mark. And again, a good punt. McNeil again avoids the attempted tackle. Has an opening, but was tripped up by his own man. And finally is covered by a Steeler. He's upset because he could have been bye-bye. Hardy Nickerson making the stop. Couple of bad snaps. Buddy Idolette is the long snapper for the Pittsburgh Steelers. 53-yard punt and a good return by McNeil.
Yep, he had it. He absolutely had a touchdown. Sure, he's partially touched on the play by number 54 on the Steelers, rookie linebacker, and eventually one of the best linebackers of the 1990s in future 5-time Pro Bowler Hardy Nickerson. But that doesn't impede him whatsoever. McNeil has daylight. No one is catching him. The man supposedly ran a hand-time 40-yard dash in under 4.2 seconds. No one's touching him at this point. McNeil is touched at the 25-yard line by Nickerson, but doesn't begin stumbling until the 32-yard line, way after the fact. He was impeded as much on this play by Hardy Nickerson as LeBron James would be impeded if he was driving to the hoop, and in the restricted area stood a traffic cone. That's how little he was impeded. McNeil was tripped up by the field. He 100% believed that he was tripped up by the field, and 100% believed that it was the Pink Floyd concert that did him in. Because after the game, he was furious with the conditions of the field, and he, alongside some other players on the Browns, were more than willing to take their frustrations out on the dark side of the moon. As one writer said, the field in Cleveland Stadium was in terrible condition. Big chunks of sod flew when a player cut or when a place kicker tried to plant his foot. The turf might have cost McNeil a touchdown on a punt return. He was on his way, but fell near the 40-yard line. McNeil wasn't going to deny those claims, saying, "I was gone. The next time Pink Floyd comes, they're going to the Coliseum. I want them off my turf." For context, McNeil is referring to the Cleveland Coliseum, as in the indoor arena that was home to the Cleveland Cavaliers at the time. And Al Baker, who got the sack that set up that giant punt return, said on this, "I never want to hear a Pink Floyd album again." Baker was willing to boycott Pink Floyd because of everything that transpired during this game, which is a bold strategy and an almost unavoidable strategy if you listen to classic rock radio. But there are way worse reasons for a boycott. Either way, Gerald McNeil got robbed. Completely and utterly robbed by a concert that had no business happening during football season, at least at that particular time. And what's unfortunate for Gerald McNeil when it comes to the game between these two teams by me right here is that this was his last opportunity to get a special teams touchdown. He scored 2 special teams touchdowns in his career, and both came in the 1986 season, coming in back-to-back weeks in the game against the Detroit Lions and the game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, going from weeks 4 through 5. But this play in 1987, this would be his last real chance because he would not find the end zone again on special teams for the rest of his career. This was a chance to get that 3rd special teams touchdown, a chance to increase his output by 50%, and he was tripped up by the field due to a Pink Floyd concert. Unfortunate stuff there for McNeil. Now, as you can tell from these highlights, this concert didn't end up hurting the Browns at the end of the day. Cleveland ended up dominating this one, winning it by a final score of 34-10, completely pulling away in the second half by scoring the final 24 points of the contest in what was the final game for the Browns before the strike. Pittsburgh was extremely sloppy, committing 13 penalties for 102 yards, and the Steelers weren't able to get anything going offensively. The Steelers committed 6 turnovers, including 1 interception that went for a pick 6, and starting quarterback Mark Malone was abysmal, going 12 for 36. 2 out of 3 ain't bad when it comes to Meatloaf, but when it comes to the percentage of passes that fall incomplete, that's really bad. Alongside his 33% completion percentage, he took 3 sacks, threw no touchdowns, and threw 5 interceptions, posting a passer rating of 7.8, which is worse if he did nothing but spike the ball into the ground on every single play. For the record, backup quarterback Bubby Brister was no better, as he went 1 for 5 with no touchdowns, 1 interception, and a passer rating of 0.0, which is your passer rating if you just don't even show up. And oddly enough, as you can tell right here, Gerald McNeil would score a touchdown in this one, as while he wouldn't get his punt return touchdown that he probably deserved, he would get a huge receiving touchdown in the 3rd quarter that gave the Browns a 17-10 lead, giving them a lead that they would never squander from that point on. But maybe they could have had a few more points. Maybe McNeil could have scored a 2nd touchdown, and you can blame Pink Floyd for that. In 1975, on their iconic song Wish You Were Here, the band asked the question, "Can you tell a green field from a cold steel rail?" And seeing as this game involved the Steelers, and most definitely did not involve a green field, maybe that's what they were referring to. They saw the future about 12 years before it actually happened. Because on this day in 1987, while Pink Floyd might have wished that you were here, The Browns, and especially Gerald McNeil, wish that they weren't. Be sure to like and subscribe if you have not done so already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and check out my other channels, JG8 for the history of college football, JG7 for the history of baseball, and JG9 News, where we talk about all things happening in the NFL. Join me every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, where we'll play live NFL trivia for cash prizes. And make sure to join me live, as we're on stream just about every single day. And thanks to all our Patreon members and our YouTube members for helping out the channel. See how you become a member and show your support financially in the description down below.